You're sitting on the couch. You've been gone for, let's be honest, about 45 minutes. You went to the store, you bought oat milk and a thing of paper towels. And when you open the front door, a creature loses its entire mind. Tail going so fast it's basically a propeller, the whole back half of the body wagging, possibly a little scream. This animal is reacting to your return from the paper towel store the way a person reacts to a loved one stepping off a plane after 2 years at war. It has no concept of where you went. It does not know what oat milk is. It just knows the door opened and the most important thing in the world walked back through it. And you just accept this. You go, "Hi, buddy," you scratch its head, and you move on with your day. But stop for 1 second and actually look at what's happening here. A descendant of wolves, an apex predator, an animal built by millions of years of evolution to hunt, to kill, to survive in the brutal cold of the Ice Age, has decided that the single most important thing in its entire universe is you. A soft, slow, two-legged primate who is frequently late with dinner. Why? Why does your dog love you like that? And I don't mean tolerate you because you have thumbs and access to the food bag. I mean the real thing, the staring, the following you into the bathroom, the grief when you leave. Because here's what nobody tells you. That love is not a metaphor. It is not you projecting. It is a measurable, biological, chemically real bond. And the story of how it got there is so much weirder than humans tamed some wolves. You and dogs did something to each other. You rewired each other's brains. And the evidence for it is genuinely incredible. Let's start at the beginning, with wolves. Every dog alive today, from the Great Dane to the thing in a handbag that looks like a sneeze, is a wolf. Genetically, a domestic dog and a gray wolf are almost indistinguishable. They can still interbreed. The Chihuahua shaking on your lap shares the overwhelming majority of its DNA with an animal that can take down an elk. Let that sit for a second. Evolution took a creature that hunts in coordinated packs across frozen tundra and turned it into something that will refuse to walk if it's drizzling. But here's the question that should bother you. How? How do you get from a wolf, an animal that is understandably terrified of and hostile toward humans, to an animal that wants to sleep in your bed and put its head on your chest? For a long time, the story we told was simple. Heroic cavemen captured wolf pups, raised them, tamed them, trained them, and slowly, over generations, bent them to our will. Humans did this. We made dogs. It's a nice story, it's flattering, it puts us in charge, and it's probably wrong. The version most scientists now favor is stranger and honestly a little humbling. The wolves domesticated themselves. Picture a human camp 30,000 years ago. There's a fire, there's shelter, and crucially, there's garbage. Bones, scraps, the leftovers of the hunt. To a wolf, that's a free meal. But there's a catch. To get it, you have to get close to the terrifying upright apes. Most wolves couldn't. They were too fearful, too aggressive, too wired to flee or fight. Their nervous systems screamed danger, so they stayed away and they stayed hungry. But a few wolves, just by random variation, were a little calmer, a little bolder, a little less afraid, and those wolves got the scraps. They ate better, they survived better, they had more pups, and those pups inherited that same slight calmness. Repeat that over thousands of generations, and you are not selecting for the strongest wolf, or the fastest wolf, or the best hunter. You are selecting for the friendliest wolf. Biologists actually have a name for this. They call it survival of the friendliest, and it might be one of the most underrated forces in the entire history of life on Earth. And we know it works because someone did the experiment. In 1959, a Soviet scientist named Dmitry Belyaev started breeding silver foxes in Siberia, wild, snarling, bitey foxes, and he selected for one single trait. Not size, not coat, not intelligence, just friendliness towards humans. Every generation he took only the calmest, least aggressive foxes and bred them together. That was it. That was the whole experiment. And what happened next is one of the most important results in all of biology.
Within just a few generations, the foxes started to change, and not just in temperament. Their ears got floppy, their tails started to curl, their coats developed patches of white, their skulls changed shape, they started to bark and whine, they began wagging their tails when humans approached. Belyaev had set out to breed for friendliness, and friendliness arrived packaged inside a floppy-eared, curly-tailed, spotty little animal that looked for all the world like a dog. And here's why that matters so much. Nobody bred those foxes to have floppy ears. Floppy ears are useless. Nobody bred them for curly tails or white patches. Those traits served no purpose. They just showed up, riding along with friendliness, as if calmness and cuteness were somehow chemically tied together at the root. Scientists think it traces back to a tiny population of cells in the early embryo, cells that influence the fear and stress system and things like ear cartilage and coat color. Turn down the dial on fear, and you accidentally turn the dial on a dozen other things at the same time. Friendliness, it turns out, has a look, and that look is a puppy. So that's how the door opened, but being unafraid of humans is a long way from loving them. A pigeon is not afraid of you. A pigeon does not gaze longingly into your eyes. So what turned a tolerant scavenger into a devoted companion? This is where it gets really good, because the answer is a hormone, and dogs didn't earn it, they hijacked it. The hormone is oxytocin. You may have heard it called the love hormone or the cuddle hormone, and for once, the nickname is basically accurate. Oxytocin is the chemical that floods a mother's brain when she holds her newborn. It's central to bonding, to trust, to that overwhelming feeling of attachment between a parent and a baby. It is one of the deepest, oldest pieces of mammalian wiring there is, and it runs on a loop. A mother looks into her baby's eyes, both of their oxytocin levels rise, which makes them want to look at each other more, which raises the oxytocin even more. It's a feedback loop of pure bonding, a chemical handshake that says, "You're mine, I'm yours." It is, without exaggeration, one of the most powerful bonding mechanisms biology has ever produced.
Now, in 2015, a team of Japanese researchers published a study in the journal Science that should honestly be more famous than it is. They had dog owners and their dogs sit together in a room, and they measured everyone's oxytocin before and after. And they found that when a dog and its owner looked into each other's eyes, the oxytocin levels of both of them went up. The dog and the human. The exact same loop, the exact same chemistry that bonds a mother to her infant was firing between a person and their dog, just from eye contact. Let that land. When your dog stares at you with those big, soft eyes, and you feel that little warm tug in your chest, that is not sentimentality. That is two different species running the ancient mammalian bonding program on each other. A loop that evolved over millions of years to keep mothers and babies attached has been borrowed wholesale by a former predator to bond with you. The researchers tried the same thing with wolves that had been raised by humans. The wolves wouldn't do it. They didn't hold the gaze. The loop didn't fire. This eye contact bonding is not a wolf thing. It is a dog thing. It evolved specifically pointed directly at us. And dogs didn't stop at borrowing the hormone. They grew new hardware to trigger it. You know the look, the puppy dog eyes, the big, sad, irresistible please face your dog makes when you are eating and they are tragically not. It turns out that look is not an accident, and it's not your imagination. In 2019, researchers compared the facial anatomy in dogs and wolves, muscle by muscle, and they found that dogs have a small muscle above their eyes. It's called the levator anguli oculi medialis, but you can just call it the eyebrow muscle. It lets them raise their inner brow and make that big-eyed, pleading, baby-like expression. Wolves don't have it, or they have only a thin, useless wisp of it. Dogs evolved an entirely new facial muscle in the relatively short window since domestication, whose only real job is to make a face that humans cannot resist. Why that face specifically? Because that inner brow raise makes a dog's eyes look bigger and more infant-like, and it mimics the exact expression humans make when we're sad. It pings the part of your brain that responds to babies. It triggers your nurturing instinct.
So when your dog hits you with the eyes and you melt and hand over the food, you are not weak. You are being operated by a muscle that evolution installed in dogs specifically to operate you. Sit with that one. We didn't just shape dogs. Dogs grew a custom tool to shape us right back. But maybe the strangest piece of this whole story is buried in the DNA. There's a condition in humans called Williams syndrome. People with Williams syndrome are, among other things, extraordinarily, indiscriminately social, exceptionally warm, trusting, friendly, drawn to other people with an intensity that's unusual even among humans. It's caused by the deletion of a specific stretch of genes. And in 2017, researchers looking at dog DNA found something remarkable. In dogs, the same region of the genome, the region tied to Williams syndrome in humans, is altered compared to wolves. The variations cluster right around those same hypersocial genes. In other words, the genetic signature that makes some humans relentlessly, overwhelmingly friendly shows up in a parallel form in the animal that is relentlessly, overwhelmingly friendly to us. Dogs may be, in a very real genetic sense, built to be your friend. And on top of all of that, dogs can read you. Here's an experiment that breaks people's brains a little. Take a treat, hide it under one of two cups, and then just point at the correct cup. A dog will follow your point and go straight to the right cup almost every time. Easy, right? Except chimpanzees, our closest relatives, animals vastly smarter than dogs by most measures, are terrible at this. They don't get the point. They don't intuitively understand that you, another creature, are trying to tell you something. Dogs do. Puppies do, before they've had much training at all. They are born tuned to human social cues. They watch your face. They follow your gaze. They check in with you when they're unsure, the exact way a small child glances back at a parent. And it goes further than pointing. Dogs catch our yawns, the same contagious yawning that spreads between close humans, which is a tiny marker of empathy. They can tell the difference between a happy human face and an angry one. They'll approach a person who's crying, even a stranger, and try to comfort them. Some studies suggest they can even smell our emotions, picking up the chemical signature of human fear or human happiness right off our skin. Your dog is reading you on channels you don't even know are broadcasting. And we can actually look inside their heads while they do it. A neuroscientist named Gregory Burns did something nobody had really tried before. He trained dogs to lie completely still, wide awake, inside an MRI machine so he could watch their brains work in real time. No sedation, no restraints, just very good boys holding still for science. And then he started showing them things. What he found is that there's a region deep in the dog's brain called the caudate nucleus. It's a reward center, the part that lights up in anticipation of something good. In humans, it fires for things like food, money, love. And in these dogs, the caudate lit up when they caught the scent of their owner. Not a stranger, not another dog, their person. And in some of the dogs, their owner's scent lit up that reward center more strongly than the smell of food did. Read that again. For some dogs, you are more rewarding than dinner. To a brain shaped by millions of years of survival, where food is the whole game, that is not a small statement. That is the brain saying, you matter more than the thing that keeps me alive.
There's one more experiment that seals it. Psychologists have a famous test for human babies called the strange situation. You put an infant in an unfamiliar room and watch what happens when the parent leaves and a stranger stays behind. A securely attached baby uses the parent as a kind of home base. Calm and confident when they're there, distressed when they go, flooded with relief when they come back. When researchers ran a version of this test on dogs, the dogs did exactly the same thing. With their owner in the room, they were brave. They explored, they played, they investigated the stranger. The moment the owner left, the playing stopped. They went to the door, they waited, and when the owner came back, the whole animal lit up. A dog relates to you the way a small child relates to a parent. You are not its landlord, you are its safe place in the world. Now let's bring in the skeptic, because the skeptic deserves a fair hearing. The cynical take goes like this: it's not love, it's a con.
Dogs figured out that acting cute gets them fed and housed, and the whole thing is just a very long-running food scam. The love is just learned behavior pointed at whoever happens to hold the kibble. And look, there's a grain of truth in there. Dogs absolutely learn that we are the source of food and good things. Of course they do. But that explanation falls apart the moment you look at the actual evidence. The oxytocin loop fires from eye contact, not from feeding. The eyebrow muscle, the hypersocial genetics, the reward center lighting up for your scent over food, the ability to read your intentions, none of that is explained by "they want snacks." A purely food-motivated animal would treat you like a vending machine. It would not grieve when you're gone. It would not press its body against you when you cry. It would not, given the choice, in study after study, so often pick praise and contact from its owner over food. The con artist theory explains the begging, it does not explain the bond. And the bond is the part written into their hormones, their brains, and their genes. And here's the part that should genuinely move you, because this was never a one-way street. We didn't just change dogs, they changed us. And the bond runs in both directions, all the way down. Remember that oxytocin study? Your levels went up too. You are getting dosed with the bonding hormone by your dog, just as much as it's getting dosed by you. And it goes deeper than a single moment. Researchers have measured long-term stress hormones, cortisol, in dogs and their owners by analyzing their hair, which records stress over months. And they found that the two sync up. A stressed-out owner tends to have a stressed-out dog. Your dog is not just living alongside you, it is absorbing your emotional state, mirroring your stress, tuning itself to your inner life over months and years. When you have a hard week, your dog has a hard week. When you finally relax, so does the creature curled up at your feet. The two of you are running on the same emotional weather. So zoom all the way out and look at what actually happened here. Tens of thousands of years ago, two predators met at the edge of a fire. By every rule of nature, they should have been rivals, or one should have been prey. Instead, they did something almost nothing else in the history of life has ever done. They crossed the line between species, and they bonded. We gave them food, safety, and a place by the fire. They gave us protection, partnership, warmth, and the strange, steadying comfort of another mind that is simply glad you exist. And in doing it, we reached into each other and rewired the machinery. We changed their faces, their genes, their hormones. They changed our hormones, our stress, our hearts. This wasn't taming. Taming is something you do to an animal. This was mutual. We domesticated each other. Think about how rare that is. In 4 billion years of life on this planet, two species looked across the gap between them and decided, somehow, to close it. Dogs were the very first animal we ever domesticated. Before farming, before cattle, before sheep, before we had planted a single seed of wheat, we had dogs. For most of the human story, in the cold, in the dark, in the danger, we were not alone. There was something beside us, watching our backs, reading our faces, loving us in a way we had built into each other on purpose without ever once knowing that's what we were doing. So the next time you walk through your front door and that ridiculous, beautiful animal loses its entire mind when you came back from buying paper towels, understand what you are actually looking at. That is not just excitement, that is 30,000 years of evolution, a hijacked hormone, a custom-grown muscle, a friendlier set of genes, a reward center wired to your scent, and an ancient bonding loop all firing at once, all aimed at you. Your dog isn't pretending, your dog isn't conning you, your dog is doing exactly what it was shaped over an unimaginable stretch of time to do. It is loving you. And the wild part, the part that should stop you in your tracks, is that the feeling is mutual. It is written into both of you, chemical and real. Your dog loves you. The science is in. It really, actually does. So here's my question for you. Does your dog do the full body wag, or are they more of a quiet leaner? Let me know in the comments, and give them a scratch behind the ears from me.